As Israel intensifies airstrikes on Gaza, access and entry of essential needs to the Gaza Strip gets more complicated. Isolated from the world, a massive humanitarian disaster lurks. More in our next report.
A people cut off from the outside world, pounded repeatedly by Israeli missiles. Just staying alive is a fight. Israel has shut down communications in the Gaza Strip, citing its push to wipe out Hamas. Whether or not Hamas is hit, we know that the Gazan people are, and hard.
The internet and communication cut is considered a humanitarian disaster. How are we supposed to get in touch with our family members? How are we going to know who lived and who died? How are we even supposed to know how to reach out to them? There's no network, no internet.
Magnate Elon Musk has said his SpaceX's Starlink will support communication links in Gaza. On the other hand, Gazan residents with access to solar energy are in demand. Extensions come at a premium. As the death toll surges by the day, virtually by the hour, 8,700 and counting, says the Palestinian Health Ministry. Children alone make up close to 4,000 of those killed. Shift focus to the hospitals. Dead bodies pour in on donkey carts. Disposing them is the challenge of the hour. Respectable burials and funerals turn secondary. The wards burst at the seams with injured Gazans. Providing treatment is an uphill ask. The basic needs, medical staff, electricity, food, medical supplies, fall short or are non-existent. This hospital that has room for 50 patients has 250 or so to look after. For the doctors available, it's a choice between the serious cases and the less critical. Lack of space inside the wards means doctors carry out big surgeries in filthy corridors, as bandages, injections, blood-soaked clothes pile up. Sanitation is a casualty. Disease lurks. Alarm has been raised of cholera outbreaks. A Gazan medic said that with the communication blackout, ambulances have to look for smoke rising in the air to locate the site of an Israeli strike.
My son was injured in his head. They took the fragment out. Everyone is wishing him well. My son can only move his hands. We massaged him until he was able to do so. He is partially paralyzed. He cannot move his legs at all, nor is he able to get up. He needs help to do so.
Classrooms at a school in Gaza's Khan Yunis have been converted into a makeshift hospital. The United Nations has already warned that a public health catastrophe threatens to engulf Gaza. With no ceasefire in sight, experts predict worse to come. For many, the only hope is getting out. The first group of injured evacuees entered Egypt in ambulances on Wednesday. They transported 81 injured foreign nationals to Egypt for treatment. 500 other foreign nationals wait at the Rafah border. At least they see hope in the distance. For thousands of locals, though, the nightmare is here to stay. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
For more on this, we are now being joined by Edward P. Joseph, Senior Fellow at the Johns Hopkins University School of Advanced International Studies and also a foreign policy analyst. He's joining us this morning from Washington, D.C. Edward, good to see you again, and thank you so much for joining us. A lot of talk about the opening of the Rafah border crossing. How crucial do you think this will be for the Palestinians and for the war as a whole?
Susan, first of all, good to be with you and to share my personal views, not those of my institution, but to share my personal views with you here this morning at a very important time. And yes, you're correct. This opening of the Rafah crossing through mediation by Qatar is quite significant. And of course, it provides, at least for some badly suffering Palestinians trapped in Gaza in this terrible violence, it provides a respite for some. And of course, we have to, all of us, be moved by these heartbreaking images The point that your report accurately noted, that a huge proportion of the Palestinians, the thousands of Palestinians who've been killed, are children, innocent kids. And obviously, it should be a priority of the United States, and not just the United States, but Israel itself, to provide and ensure safety for these Palestinian civilians. And of course, the question is how best to do that. Please.
What about Hamas? Do you think the fact that the international community is not putting the onus on Hamas is making these casualties and these numbers go higher and higher, considering the fact that we know Hamas uses its population, the Gaza population, as human shields? The magnitude of the civilian casualties has forced the international community to try to convince Israel for a ceasefire, but tone deaf completely when it comes to Hamas. Why the double standard?
Susan, it's an important question, but we have to, here in this critical situation, we have to put the cause of Palestinian civilians, above all Palestinian children, first. And when we do that, we see that we have to first think of ways urgently to provide sanctuary for Palestinian civilians. And that means thinking in a number of ways, not just in one way, but a number of ways. One is this Rafah crossing opening. Another is to have sanctuary within Gaza that the Israelis can and will respect. And there's also been proposals, even, for example, by the Israeli author Yuval Hariri, to allow Palestinians, perhaps under support of the International Committee of the Red Cross, into Israel. So that's really where the focus has to be. And that, Susan, allows me to turn to the thrust of your question, which is, yes, correct. We have to keep the focus on protecting Palestinian civilians. And the way to do that is by not advancing some kind of political agendas here. So the truth is, and this is contrary to what the UN Secretary General has suggested, the truth is that this war, this terrible war that is ongoing, unfolding before our eyes, causing so much suffering among Palestinians, was launched by Hamas on October 7th. And it's incorrect to suggest otherwise. It's incorrect to simply point to the wider unresolved question of the plight of the Palestinian people and to relativize the actions of Hamas, which were intentionally designed on October 7th to maximize the killing of civilians, and including the most innocent form of human life, babies, infants. So not unintentional, but intentional attempt to maximize the death of Israeli civilians on October 7th, just 3 weeks ago. And that's how this war started. Israel had no intention of undertaking such an operation. So it does not advance the cause of Palestinian civilians to suggest otherwise or relativize the actions of Israel and Hamas. But of course, Israel does have its responsibilities here, and that includes not just in Gaza, but also in the West Bank. And the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, has to take action to completely stop and halt provocative and violent acts by settlers in the West Bank, as former prime ministers, including one well-known Prime Minister, Ariel Sharon, did in the past. So there are important responsibilities, Susan, here that stretch across the realm. And yes, indeed, it is critical to remember that this war was launched by Hamas, which has no interest in peace in between Israel and the Palestinians, and has, as Dennis Ross, the highly respected former negotiator, has pointed out, Hamas has consistently undermined efforts to achieve peace between Israel and its Palestinian neighbors. Please.
So much devastation to watch. Edward, thank you so much for that thorough analysis. I really appreciate you coming on. We're going to be watching for Secretary of State Antony Blinken's trip to Israel. Let's see what outcome that will have. Do come back, and I look forward to speaking to you again. Thanks for that.
Likewise. Thank you very much.